Hi guys, Dr. Rob Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. I'd like to talk today about biochemical individuality. What does biochemical individuality mean? What it really means is that we are all different on the inside. If you have a look at people on the outside, you can see everybody looks different. Everyone's got different kind of hair, different eyes, different nose, different facial features. And our internal biochemistry is very similar. We all have different efficiencies in metabolic pathways. We all have different rates that our enzymes work at. And we're all biochemically individual. We all have an individual internal biochemistry that is not like anybody else's internal biochemistry. And this is a reflection of the fact that we are all genetically different. There's probably never been anyone on this planet that had the same genes as you, and unless you have an identical twin, it's very unlikely that there is anyone on this planet that is genetically the same as you. So we have this different internal biochemistry. Now, this internal biochemistry means that some of us are predisposed to develop particular diseases and are much higher risk of those diseases than other people. Some people, for example, are predisposed to getting cancer. Some people are more predisposed to getting cardiovascular disease. Some people are more predisposed to getting obesity. Some people are very lucky. They've been given a very good hand of cards, and they are very low risk of all diseases. But these people are very rare. Nearly all of us are predisposed to getting some kind of disease eventually. And this is because we have different genes, and increasingly the literature is starting to identify particular types of genes, polymorphisms within genes, different varieties, different alleles of genes that predispose us to particular diseases. Many particular genes have been identified that cause or increase the risk of particular diseases, but nearly always they need an environmental trigger. In the absence of that environmental trigger, these genes just sit there doing their job. They produce the proteins that they need, and those proteins do their job in the body. However, if you provide an environmental trigger, those genes are exposed as being less efficient, producing less efficient proteins, for example, and this predisposes you to particular conditions. Now, what is the environmental trigger that is being identified quite frequently in the literature? Well, it's components of the Western diet. The reason that people in Western nations develop Western diseases is because of two factors. Firstly, they have a genetic predisposition to perhaps develop those diseases, and secondly, they have the environmental factors of a poor quality diet that expose their genes and allow them to develop those diseases. So, in the absence of a low quality Western diet, many people would never develop these Western diseases, and this is shown throughout the world. If you go to countries where these polymorphisms exist, they're in the population, but you don't expose these people to a Western diet, the incidence of these diseases is much lower. The risk of developing cardiovascular disease in developing countries, for example, is much lower than the risk in developed countries, and this is because they don't have the environmental trigger of a poor quality diet. So what's the take-home message from this? Well, the take-home message is that genetic factors are interesting. It's very interesting to read the literature and find out what these genes do and where they are and how they interact. But there's nothing you can really do if you have these genes anyway. Once you have them, there's nothing you can do really to change the genes. But in the absence of a poor quality diet, they're irrelevant anyway. You need this poor quality Western diet in order to be able to develop these Western diseases. So I would suggest that if you're thinking that you have a family history of obesity or a family history of heart disease, and you believe that you're predisposed to getting that disease, I would suggest that's not necessarily the case. If you change your lifestyle habits and you eat a high quality diet, perhaps you'll be the first person in your lineage not to develop cardiovascular disease or not to develop obesity, and perhaps you'll die of something else. We're all going to die, that's inevitable, but you can prolong your life by not developing these diseases kind of around your middle age, and you can then live a long, productive life, hopefully disease-free. So the take-home message from this, as always, is abandon your typical Western diet if you're eating one, because it will almost certainly eventually lead you to develop a Western lifestyle disease. and look towards traditional diets, because studies that have been done on populations that eat traditional diets, that eat their traditional foods, have found that they don't develop aging diseases. They don't develop these kind of Western lifestyle diseases that cause them to have suffering in their later life, and they lead long and productive lives. So I would suggest that you look at traditional diets like the Mediterranean diet, look at the figures that show the longevity of the people that eat these traditional diets in places like Sicily, and take personal responsibility and make up your own mind if you think that's some route that you would like to follow.